"Do you know who the woman you just insulted is?" the older billionaire asked, his voice calm yet sharp as a blade. The arrogant woman across from him smirked, still convinced of her superiority, until he looked her dead in the eyes and said, "She's my daughter." Just hours earlier, that black waitress in an apron had been humiliated, drenched in wine, mocked in front of a silent, indifferent crowd in a luxury hotel lobby. No one knew who she was. But when the truth came out, everything changed. What happened to the one who shamed her? You won't see it coming. Watch until the end, because sometimes one sentence is enough to shatter someone's entire world. Some people are born standing at the very top of society, not because they are better, but because the world was already built beneath their feet. Amara Sinclair was one of them, the only daughter of Victor Sinclair, a real estate tycoon and chairman of the largest hotel conglomerate in the northeastern United States. Amara never had to wait, never had to ask permission, and never had to learn what impossible meant. She lived in penthouses where the floors were hand-polished, attended schools reserved for the ultra-wealthy, and spent her summers traveling Europe on her own custom itinerary. She was pampered, served, praised, and from a very young age, Amara learned one thing: if you stay silent long enough, others will speak for you. If you stay cold long enough, others will fear you. Until one night, a lavish party at the family's estate, Amara lost her temper at a housekeeper for spilling a drop of coffee on a tablecloth. Her name was Ruth Ellison Dash, a woman who had served the Sinclair family for nearly 20 years. Amara doesn't remember what she said. She only remembers that final look, wet eyes filled with pain. A few hours later, Ruth died of a stroke. No one blamed Amara. Everyone said it was a coincidence. But she knew. Some truths can't stay buried forever. A few weeks after the funeral, Amara left the estate, erased all her social media, turned down every event invitation, and vanished from high society. She left behind only one letter to her father. Not an apology, but a decision. She wanted to work as a hotel server at the most luxurious property the Sinclair family owned. Not for the experience, not for the challenge, but for one reason only: to learn how to be human. From the very bottom, no one believed Amara Sinclair would actually go through with it. Not even Victor Sinclair, a man who had steered billion-dollar projects through economic crises, could fully comprehend his daughter's request. Because in his world, no one walks away from a throne to wash dishes. But Amara was different. She didn't beg her father for forgiveness. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She simply said, "I don't want people to be kind to me because they know who I am. I want them to treat me honestly, like anyone else." And just like that, the name Amara Sinclair vanished from the employee records of the Belgrave Hotel. In the internal system, she was known only as Amara C., using her mother's surname. No one on the service staff knew who she was. No one was allowed to. She started her morning shifts at 5 a.m., clearing tables, scrubbing floors, wiping windows, learning how to bow her head when guests complained, learning how to smile when screamed at over a delayed entree, even if it wasn't her fault. No one asked why she was there, maybe because her face didn't look like someone who needed the job. Maybe because her eyes carried a distance that kept people from getting too close. She wasn't looking for sympathy. She didn't come here to tell a story. Amara came to quietly peel away every layer of arrogance. That life had wrapped around her since birth. Every insult she didn't answer was a lesson. Every late-night floor she cleaned alone was an act of atonement. Every walk home on aching legs was a small step forward. Not toward glory, but toward becoming a person of substance. And slowly, between late-night shifts and the clinking of glasses, Amara began to understand something she'd never touched in her previous life. True dignity doesn't need to be seen. It needs to be felt. Every morning at the Belgrave began before the city woke up. There were no chimes from a luxury alarm clock, no pre-brewed coffee, no maid tidying up the bed. There was only Amara, her crisp black and white uniform, and a pair of server shoes already wearing thin at the heels after 3 months of standing 8 hours a day. No one noticed she had once lived in a 17-bedroom mansion. No one asked why a girl with a voice straight out of an international school was wiping down toilets after guests left. Amara said nothing. She simply worked, quietly, diligently, precisely. She polished each wine glass with microfiber cloths until the light reflected without a single scratch. She aligned forks and knives with millimeter-perfect precision. She memorized regular guests' names, allergies, and favorite drinks. Not for praise, but because she believed that to serve was a form of honor. There was only one person who seemed to notice her more than the others. Darius Cole, a night shift co-worker who once asked, "Have you ever worked in service before?" Amara simply shook her head. "Number, but I'm learning." And she truly was learning. Learning to listen without interrupting. Learning to endure sarcasm without reacting. Learning to stand tall, even when everything inside her wanted to collapse. Amara didn't want pity. She only wanted to live each day in a way that, if Ruth Ellison could see her from somewhere, she wouldn't turn away. Life without spotlights looked like this. No one waiting at the end of the day with flowers. Just fatigue, a sore back, aching feet, and a very quiet kind of peace. But for Amara, quiet was enough, because for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. Friday nights at the Belgrave were always the busiest. Guests from the worlds of finance, entertainment, fashion, and politics. They didn't just come to dine. They came to be seen and to be remembered. Every table held an unspoken negotiation. Every glass of wine was a quiet assertion of social standing. Amara had grown used to moving through all of it. To her, crystal chandeliers were no longer dazzling, just light fixtures that needed meticulous dusting. Music wasn't ambiance, just background noise she had to listen through to catch a guest's call. She no longer saw glamour, she only saw details that had to be perfect. Until that night, when a new name appeared on the seating chart, Celeste Langford. Amara didn't know her, but with just one glance, she immediately recognized the type. A body-hugging dress with a logo so iconic it didn't need to be shown. A limited edition handbag, one of only 20 in the world. Eyes that refused to meet the doorman's. A voice smooth and cold, issuing requests as if listening was a chore she barely tolerated. Amara froze, not out of admiration, but because Celeste was a mirror, not a reflection of who Amara was now, but a sharp, painful image of who she used to be, the girl who used to glide through this very lobby in dresses just like that, the girl who snapped her fingers to summon servers, the girl who believed other people were born to stand behind her. The confrontation didn't make Amara angry, it made her feel cold. Because sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't being looked down on, but realizing you once looked down on others the very same way. Amara tightened her grip on the serving tray, steadied her breath. Just another guest, just another reservation, just another chapter in the lesson she had chosen to walk into. But deep down, she knew tonight would be unlike any night before. Amara approached table 9 with the same calm she'd perfected over time, her breathing steady, hands still, eyes focused. It was a skill honed over months of practice, serving with dignity even when the person before you doesn't deserve it. Celeste Langford sat as if the entire room revolved around her, phone in hand, eyes locked on the screen. She didn't look up when Amara greeted her, didn't acknowledge the offer for water. She simply muttered cold as ice. "Sparkling, no ice, hurry, I don't have all night." Amara nodded, saying nothing. She turned and walked toward the bar. Her fingers gently gripped a crystal glass bearing the Belgrave's signature crest, the finest kind. She poured exactly to the line, wiped the base, placed it on the tray, and returned to the table. Her steps remained even, her smile faint but present. But inside, a long-buried feeling was beginning to rise, not anger, but a deep, unnamed shame, as if she were watching an old version of herself play out in front of her eyes. Amara set the glass down flawlessly. No sound, no spill. "Here you are," she said, softly but clearly. Celeste didn't look. Her hand, still fixed on her phone, reached out without awareness and knocked the glass. The water spilled. Not much, but enough to rush across the table. and fall directly onto the front of Amara's uniform. The surrounding space paused for a beat. Celeste finally looked up, meeting Amara's eyes for the first time, but not to apologize. Instead, she frowned. "Oh my God, do you know how to do anything without making a mess?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, crystal clear. A nearby table fell silent mid-conversation. An older gentleman set his knife down, tilting his head slightly to observe. Amara did not bow her head. She didn't retaliate. She simply stood there, feeling the cold water soaking into her shirt, feeling the silence spreading through the space, and most of all, feeling the sting of a wound that had healed but never disappeared. She had once caused someone to endure this. Now she stood in that exact place, not because of karma, not as punishment, but because truth has a way of circling back, exactly how it must. Amara nodded gently. "I'm sorry. I'll bring a towel right away." She turned, back straight, steps composed, but the stain on her uniform wasn't just water, it was memory, a mirror, and the first warning that this night was far from over. Amara returned to the service area, took a white cloth and wiped the remaining water from her hands. She didn't rush, she didn't avoid, she simply did what needed to be done. Her shirt was still damp, but she knew water would dry. Only the stares from the room would linger. She brought out a new glass, refilled the water, continued her duties as if nothing had happened. But Celeste Langford wasn't done. As Amara turned away, a freshly poured glass of red wine was already on the table. Celeste glanced at it, just briefly. And then, with clear intent, she lifted it, wrist tilting gracefully, and with one swift, deliberate motion, flung the wine over her shoulder. Amara didn't have time to turn. She didn't need to. The warm, thick liquid struck the back of her shirt, soaked into the fabric, seeped into her skirt, soiled her apron. The splash was soft, but the sound of the glass hitting the floor rang out. Like a gavel slamming onto marble, no one said a word. A few diners froze in disbelief. Someone let out a faint gasp. Celeste laughed, not a giggle, a loud, triumphant laugh. Sharp and clear, "Maybe this time you'll learn how to pay attention." Amara stood still, her back drenched, clinging with red wine, but she didn't turn around. She didn't react, didn't brush it off, didn't speak. She simply inhaled deeply, steadied her pulse, and walked away. Slowly, evenly, no haste, no stumble. Every step was one taken through humiliation, not to bury it, but to walk through it. As someone who knew she had once done this to another person, she didn't look back at Celeste, because she didn't need to. She knew that face well, she had worn it, and she also knew when someone like that laughs, it's because they believe no one can reclaim dignity after something like this. But Amara wasn't trying to reclaim anything. She was rebuilding, from the ground up, even if it was soaked, even if it burned, even if it hurt. She kept walking, and she did not bow her head. Victor Sinclair sat at the far end of the lobby, hidden behind an antique patterned screen. He had always come to the Belgrave once a week, not to supervise, but simply to observe. Though the hotel had long been handed over to executives, he kept this ritual as a quiet thread tying him to the past. And tonight he had seen enough. He had seen his daughter, standing motionless with a red wine stain blooming across her back. He had watched her walk away, slowly, soaked, cold, without a single word of complaint. No turning back, no bitter glare. Only that figure dash, thinner than before, but somehow stronger than anything he'd ever seen in high society. Victor clenched his fist. From the moment Amara asked to work at the hotel, he had promised not to interfere. This was her chosen path of atonement, a road she insisted on walking without the shadow of her father's protection. And he had kept that promise. He let her scrub floors, let her serve those who once bowed to her at cocktail parties, let her learn the kind of lesson no elite school would ever teach. But tonight, a line had been crossed. No one deserved to be treated like that, especially not his daughter, who was already carrying wounds yet to heal, and now had salt thrown into them in front of the entire world. Victor pulled out his phone, pressed a speed dial. He spoke only 3 words: "Remove that woman," then hung up. No further explanation, no shouting, no slamming of fists, no scene, like the kind others with power might have made. Because Victor Sinclair didn't need to raise his voice, he only needed to make a decision. And the decision he had just made was about to change everything tonight. Celeste Langford adjusted her hair as she laughed. She didn't care about the stares around her. She assumed they were admiring her, or perhaps jealous. She didn't know, or didn't want to know, that the silence in the lobby had changed its tone, that her laughter no longer softened the room. It made people's skin crawl. Moments later, the hotel manager, Ethan Ward, approached her table. Polite, discreet, but firm. "Ms. Langford, the chairman of Sinclair Holdings, Mr. Victor Sinclair, would like to see you. Now." Celeste raised an eyebrow. A flicker of excitement passed through her eyes. "Oh, someone finally recognizes me." She stood, smoothed her dress, and followed Ethan. As if being summoned to a first-class private lounge, she didn't notice the eyes behind her, didn't realize no one was smiling at her anymore, didn't question why no one wished her good evening the way they had when she arrived. The door to the VIP lounge opened. Victor Sinclair was already seated. No need for introductions, no nameplate required. His presence alone was a form of power Celeste had not anticipated. She entered confidently, her lips already forming a greeting. Half respectful, half entitled. "Mr. Sinclair, it's an honor to—" Victor looked up. His eyes weren't cold. They weren't angry. They were calm. And razor sharp. Celeste cut herself off. She didn't know why her heartbeat suddenly quickened. Victor motioned for Ethan to close the door. Then he spoke. Slowly, his voice unwavering. "I watched the entire incident from beginning to end." Nothing more was needed. The room became a courtroom. No judge, no jury. Just the truth, waiting to be spoken aloud. Celeste's fingers tightened around her purse. Her palms began to sweat. For the first time all night, she wasn't sure who held the power anymore. Victor Sinclair didn't look at Celeste as a guest. He looked at her as a person facing the consequences of her own choices. Celeste tried to hold her smile, though her lips were already starting to dry. "I think maybe there's been a misunderstanding. Victor raised his hand. Not sharply, just gently. But it was enough to kill any excuse before it left her mouth. He spoke. Evenly and clearly, "I saw the way you spoke to my staff. I saw how you dismissed them, belittled them, how you used your silence as if it were some form of power." Celeste bit her lip, but he wasn't finished. "I saw you throw water. I heard your insults, and finally I watched you throw red wine on the back of a server who was walking away." A pause. Then he said, "The person you humiliated is my daughter." Celeste froze. There was no excuse fast enough, no sharp line clever enough. To hide the truth now laid bare. He continued, "Her full name is Amara Sinclair. But here, she doesn't use my name. She chose on her own to start over. No one here knows who she really is. She didn't ask for privilege. She never once demanded special treatment. You saw a uniform, and you decided that was enough reason to look down." Victor leaned back slightly, his gaze never leaving Celeste. "I'm not angry because you disrespected my daughter. I'm angry because you believe that anyone wearing an apron doesn't deserve respect." Celeste opened her mouth. I didn't know." "Exactly," Victor cut in. "You didn't know, and you didn't care to find out. That's not a mistake. That's character." The final words fell like a verdict. No gavel, no declaration of guilt, only truth. Undeniable, irreversible. Victor said nothing more. He stood, turned, and walked out, leaving Celeste alone in a silence so heavy it felt suffocating. No scolding, no warnings, just a cold retreat. As if he had quietly shut a door that would never open to her again. What Celeste didn't know was that another door was wide open, just outside. A guest, by chance, had recorded the moment she flung the wine. Not for drama, but out of a simple feeling. This just feels so wrong. The video was posted at 9:17 p.m. 46 minutes later, the hashtag number Belgrave humiliation topped trends across the United States. The image, a black woman in a server's uniform, standing tall, with red wine soaking through her white shirt. The audio, a dismissive laugh, a cold voice. One line, "Do you know how to do anything without making a mess?" No filters, no background music, no edits, just 37 seconds. And the internet did the rest. The first post came from a hospitality student, then KOLs, then models, then social justice advocates, then the press peeled back every layer. Who was the woman covered in wine? Why didn't she fight back? Why hadn't the Belgrave issued a statement? Then came the exclusive headline from High Rise Digest. The server in the viral video is Amara Sinclair, only daughter of Victor Sinclair. Messages flooded the Belgrave's inbox like a tidal wave. An international news agency offered $250,000 for an exclusive interview. Talk shows extended invitations to Amara. People began piecing together her past. Photos of her on yachts, her graduation in Switzerland, press shots with Victor at hotel industry events. And her. She said nothing. Amara still showed up at 5 a.m., still polished crystal glasses, still stood quietly by the wall, like a polite shadow. She said only one thing to manager Ethan Ward: "I didn't come here to be a story. I came here to make things right." That evening, she sat alone in the staff break room, eating a late lunch. Darius Cole gently placed a cold soda in front of her. No questions, just silence. Then he said, "The whole world saw you, but no one knows how many years it took you to become the woman standing there." Amara didn't respond. She simply bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you." And for the first time, in many, many years, she felt peace. The next morning, an internal memo was sent across the entire Sinclair Hotels network. Guest Celeste Langford is hereby added to the global Do Not Serve list. Permanent, no exceptions. Chairman Victor Sinclair. No press conference, no explanation. One sentence, one signature. That evening, 3 luxury brands announced they were terminating all partnerships with Celeste Langford. Her publicist declined to comment. Her social media profile was set to private at 2:16 p.m. By 2:42 p.m., it was deactivated. They didn't need the full story. They only needed to know a woman threw wine on a server, laughed, and walked away. Exactly 24 hours after the incident, High Rise Digest published a second article. This time, it wasn't about Amara. It was about Celeste. One by one, former staff began to speak out. Former assistants, chauffeurs, front desk clerks. They told of being called deaf, having receipts thrown in their faces, being addressed by pet names instead of their own. No one had believed them before. Now, no one doubted them. Inside private hospitality networks, the name Celeste Langford became a cautionary keyword. A senior manager in France commented, "It doesn't matter who she used to be. What matters is, the world is changing, and this time it remembers who bowed their heads and who stepped on others to keep walking." In a quiet corner of the staff break room at the Belgrave, Amara was still switching shifts. She didn't check the news. Or perhaps she knew but no longer needed to care. Because true justice isn't when someone is punished. It's when the person who once caused harm is forced to live in a world they are no longer welcome in. The next morning, the Belgrave welcomed its first guests at 5:40 a.m. The lobby was as quiet as usual, but something had changed. In the eyes of the staff, they had seen the clip. They had seen the permanent ban notice, and they now knew that the girl in the white apron standing beside them every day wasn't just anyone. But when Amara walked in, carrying a tray of coffee with a fresh bruise on her wrist from the night before, no one said a word. No one stared. Only one thing remained unchanged. She was still the first to arrive and the one who wiped down every last water ring on the front desk. Darius Cole stepped over quietly, folding napkins beside her. He finally spoke, after days of quiet observation. "You don't have to do this anymore. You could leave through 1,000 different doors." Amara looked up. Her reply was calm, without a trace of hesitation. "I know, but if I walk away now, I won't be myself anymore." She wasn't working because she needed the money. She wasn't there because anyone forced her. And she wasn't doing it to be forgiven. She was working because every pair of expensive shoes she'd ever worn had never taught her how to stand on her own 2 feet. And now that she finally had, she didn't want to stop. Darius watched her for a long moment, then nodded, and in that moment, under the soft gold lights, the quiet shuffling of chairs, and the scent of morning coffee, no one stood out. There were only people in the same uniform, choosing how to walk through the world, with dignity, not notoriety. That afternoon, as Amara was wiping down tables in the Level 1 lounge, a middle-aged couple approached the front desk. The man wore a worn suit, his face marked with quiet hardship. The woman beside him had on a grey sweater, clutching a small envelope tightly in her hand. They hesitated, then looked toward Amara. "Are you the girl from the video?" Amara paused. Her hand still held the cloth, but her eyes softened as they dropped. "I'm sorry if that caused any discomfort." The woman quickly shook her head, stepped forward, and gently took Amara's hand. "Number not at all. Our daughter works as a server too. She studies during the day and wipes tables at a little diner by night. Last night, she cried when she saw the clip. She said, 'For the first time, I saw someone standing where I stand, who didn't bow her head and just take it.'" Amara said nothing. She didn't need to. The mother's eyes spoke everything. Then the man stepped forward, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a simple old silver hair clip. He placed it in Amara's hand. "This belonged to my wife when she was young. Now she wants to give it to someone more deserving than anyone who ever wore a crown." Amara didn't cry. She simply nodded. And for the first time since donning the white apron, her smile wasn't meant to please anyone, wasn't meant to serve anyone. It was a smile of gratitude toward herself, for choosing to stay, for choosing silence when it mattered, and for, finally, no longer fearing the way others looked at her. Outside the hotel, a gentle breeze carried the scent of orange blossoms in the June air. The world moved on. But for Amara, something had changed forever. Not her last name, not her status, but how the world saw her. And more importantly, how she saw herself. Late at night, most of the hotel lights had been dimmed. The last sounds of cleaning echoed from the kitchen. Out on the 12th floor balcony, the night wind drifted softly across the black iron railing, carrying a trace of salt from the distant sea. Amara stood alone, no uniform, just a soft grey sweater, hair down. In her hand she still held the silver hair clip, a gift with no monetary value, but enough to make her feel as though the world had quietly forgiven her. Behind her, footsteps. She didn't need to turn. Victor Sinclair stepped beside her, saying nothing. Father and daughter looked in the same direction, toward the blinking lights of the city far below, twinkling like whispered memories from a time long gone. After a moment, he rested his hand on her shoulder, light as air. "You don't have to prove anything anymore." The words came gently, not loud, not trembling, but more complete than any speech ever could be. Amara turned to him. Her voice was calm, as if she'd been rehearsing this line her entire life. "But it's only now that I truly feel alive. No blame, no list of past mistakes or unmet expectations. Just two people, once on opposite ends of the world, now standing side by side, understanding that atonement isn't a burden, it's a choice." Victor nodded, his hand still resting on her shoulder, like a father who once didn't know how to hold his child, and was now learning how from the beginning. And in the quiet night at the Belgrave, there were no flashes, no cameras, no hashtags, only a father and a daughter, standing still in a world they had once lost sight of, and finally found their way back into together. The next morning, the lobby of the Belgrave opened to greet a new day. Amara walked past the marble columns, holding a room list in one hand. Her uniform was the same, black dress, white apron, her hair pinned back neatly with a small silver clip. No one recognized her as the girl who once sat front row at European fashion shows. And no one needed to. A group of new guests entered. Among them, a well-dressed woman approached Amara, handed her a $100 bill, and smiled with quiet meaning. "I saw your video, so inspiring. Take this. You deserve to be a phenomenon." Amara looked up, met the woman's eyes. No anger, no pride. She gently placed the bill back on the counter and replied, "I'm not a phenomenon, I'm a person." The air around them paused for a few seconds. No one laughed. No one spoke. Only a quiet wave of respect, rippling out from someone who had once hurt others, once lost herself, and was now living fully as a human being. That afternoon, her words spread across the internet, not from scandal, not from drama, but from something harder to name. The sense that somewhere out there, someone stood up, not to shine, but to be forgiven, and to forgive. Amara didn't post. She didn't sign sponsorships, didn't launch a talk show. She kept working, carrying trays, greeting guests. But one thing had changed. No one saw her as a shadow anymore. No one dared think servers were less. In a world where everyone wants to become a moment, Amara only wanted to be a person. And in the end, that's what made her unforgettable. She didn't need applause. She didn't need hashtags or belated apologies. All she needed was one chance, to stand tall, face herself, and never back down again. Amara didn't return to the glamorous world she came from. She chose to stay, among white napkins and crystal glasses, in the very place where she was once most humiliated. Because she knew honor doesn't come from a last name. It comes from how you face shame and rise. And her father, a billionaire once standing at the peak of the world, chose not to shield her, not to interfere, until the moment it truly mattered. If you've ever watched someone be treated unfairly and felt powerless, you'll understand this feeling. Share this video if you believe. Respect should be the default, not a reward. And don't forget to leave a comment. I stand with the one they look down on. Together, we're rewriting the way the world sees people. See you in the next video.